Well, let's continue the reading of this document. 4. Concerning the metaphysical aspects of the English grammar. We are aware that we have a lot of grammar decisions based on our limitations of sound and producing, thinking limit, and general knowledge about space and time, countable and uncountable mass words, etc. So take a look. You guys must remember that we have grammar rules concerning sounds, the fact that we cannot think about everything at the same time, and even concerning space and time, like the demonstratives, for example, this, that, these, those. For example, English has decided to use the indefinite article "and" before a substantive whose first syllable sounds like a vowel in order to avoid cacophony. And try to say apple. It sounds weird. Of course, and sadly, the the correction system of the app here has made a correction here, but I was trying to say apple. This is kind of strange, and that's why we have this rule to say an apple. English has decided also to avoid a lot of words variations and conjugation of verbs because it is a big effort to remember a lot of things that could be less in number with some smart pattern manifestations. For example, I did, you did, he did. English doesn't change these things. They have thought it's much smarter to repeat the subjects and maintain the form of the verbs, and we have the same form in every verb in simple past, just in the simple past indicative of the to be verb that we have I was, she were. But we know that in subjunctive you don't have to do this. It's were for everyone. So you just have to repeat the verb in order to use it. But you cannot forget the subject pronoun, otherwise I wouldn't know who is doing this action. In Portuguese, this is something very bad because although you have the advantage of hiding the subject pronoun, you have to memorize 6 desinences, 6 terminations for each one of the conjugations. So, like in Portuguese, for example, we would say eu fiz, tu fizeste, ele fez, nós fizemos, vós. I don't even know how to do the second plural, just for you to see how difficult it is to remember the Portuguese conjugations. It would have in total at least 72 forms in Portuguese. So yes, I can hide the subject pronoun, but I have to memorize 72 forms of termination. So this is not an advantage, right? In English, we also have in simple present the same form of the conjugations too, as long as you don't forget the subject pronoun. Only the third person singular indicative that you have to do she does instead of she do, just because they have realized that there is a ambiguity if you don't use it. We will see this in the programmatical aspects of the English grammar. As long as you don't forget the subject pronoun, right? The language in general had to be limited in practical human life time in order to be useful for our survival. We have developed language in order to make us survive more. Thus, the words and expressions should not only represent real things, although in the case of the abstract substantives, we have an attempt to materialize unreal things in some way that we can understand them. But they had to be uttered in not so much time. So, of course, we have arbitrated for something that this is not taking so long to be said. So this is arbitrary, but we have a good sense concerning this. Good sense about uh, being practical in your human life. I have another book. I could say another paper concerning good sense. Maybe I could record some videos about this too. What is supposed to be good sense anyway? All these decisions are based on a more or less natural definition of what we understand about the concept of a human being, a space time limited creature with particular biological capacities, which is supposed to be general to all humans, and therefore a metaphysical statement about ourselves. So, this is another metaphysical statement about ourselves that influences the grammar rules that we have developed in English, for example, and of course in some other languages. By the way, what could we say about God's grammar? What kind of metaphysical considerations could we make considering the definition of God as an infinite and an all powerful being? So, imagine if you could talk to God. I've made a very interesting text about this. What would it be the God's accent? If God talks as an infinite and all powerful being, what would it be his or her accent? He would talk as a Brazilian, as an American. We would have to arbitrate a language, a tone, an accent, the words, the culture of God, and we would be limiting an infinite being. So, if God can talk, it is not God that we are talking about. So, this is a very incisive argument against the believers, right? If they say that they can talk to God, they would have to choose a language for God. What would it be? A limiting act against something or an idea which cannot be limited, right? Which is God. 5. There is a pretty interesting difference between if and whether. This is something that the native speakers almost don't respect, right? Both treat about conditions, but you have to consider something before deciding which one of them is the correct use. When you want to present a condition or a cause for a determined effect, you use if. Like, for example, if I'm tall, then, and you can remove this then, by the way. If I'm tall, I'm allowed to pass. This is a condition. I'm presenting a condition. And nevertheless, if you want just to make a comment about a given condition, then you use whether. I don't know whether this man is married or not. The comment in the example is that you don't know something related to the conditional. In grammatical terms, when you want to start a subordinate clause with a condition, you use whether. It's easy to see that in the whether cases, you cannot visualize a kind of cause-effect relation. In the example above, if the man is married, then I don't know. Jesus, does it seem like a cause-effect relation? If the man's married, then I don't know. This I don't know doesn't seem like an effect of the condition if the man's married. So this is a way to understand why whether is not related to this cause effect relationship between clauses, right? This doesn't make any sense. So, thanks to our notion of cause and effect already shown above, which is a metaphysical one, English has made this decision to its grammar. So, we have metaphysical rule in this world that says that every cause has an effect, and every effect has been caused. We could say that, or every effect has been created by that cause. So, because of this metaphysical rule, we have this difference between if and whether. They have created this difference because there are some conditions in which you don't have to care about the cause-effect relationship. It is paradoxical, in addition to all other aspects of life, to think about how we were able to learn language through language. We needed language to learn language. How is it possible? Even before we had any so-called mastery of it. If it has a limit or not, whether for the before or for the after, a limit concerning the beginning or concerning the end of the times. It is from some section of it that we begin to use it. Mema, papa, water, or even non-verbal expressions such as gestures or cries. We arbitrate, even if unconsciously, for stating to use it. So, I don't know the beginning of the end of the times, but somewhere or I don't know, in a time within this infinite interval, we have started to talk, like things like mama, papa, water, and some other things that could help us to survive. Right? We've had to start in a place, in a time. So it seems like kind of paradoxical. We needed language to talk about language, but how is it possible if we don't have language to talk about language? So we have been born in something in between. Or even non-verbal expressions such as gestures or cries, and we arbitrate, even if unconsciously, for starting to use it. Is there the correct start point? Is there still a moment when we can, if we should, say everything? Uh, we have is our mission in this world to say everything that we can. Is this our purpose? Because if we have started to talk about something, maybe our objective in this world is to talk everything. Take a look. Now we are talking about the purpose of life because of grammar. It is before the question about the purpose of language that we reflect on the purpose of life, pure metaphysics. Ignoring the fact that life is just the difference itself, because before it, supposedly, there was nothing. Many have already commented that this starting point will be the apprehension of the verb to be. Now, it couldn't make more sense since the property of being ipso facto in all beings. So every being has the property of being something. There is, after all, no more fundamental way of referring to them. The to be verb is the most fundamental way to refer to things, right? However, although metaphysics is on our side when making this decision, on the other hand, grammar, for some reason, follows the opposite path. That is, it tells us that the verb to be is the most irregular of all, grammatically speaking, and therefore the most difficult to learn. This is something very interesting, right? The to be verb is the most irregular of all verbs, and not just in English, but in a lot of languages. So something that is supposed to be the most common thing that we have in all beings, which is the property of be, of being something, is the most difficult thing to speak about. Maybe because of this, right? Maybe because it's so fundamental that since it's very difficult to talk about fundamental things, talking about the to be verb is something very difficult. Let's look at Portuguese. Eu sou, tu és, ele é, nós somos, vós sois, eles são. All different. In Spanish, soy, eres, es, somos, sois, son. All different too. French, the être verb. Je suis, tu es, il est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils sont. Incredible. German, I won't try to vocalize these things, but you can see that they are all different. Well, there are two alike. English, I am, you are, he is, we are, you are, they are. English is easy though, mainly because any verb like walk is the same for all pronominal subjects, with a slight difference in the third singular, about what we are going to talk later. I'm talking here about the ambiguity that we will see when we analyze the pragmatical aspects behind grammar. Like, for example, I walk, you walk, she walks. If it weren't for this ambiguity, we wouldn't have to put this S. but sadly we must do it. But English had this original idea of not changing the the conjugations, right? So why does being have to be so irregular? Maybe it's related to the initial paradox. We only learn the language because we already know how to use it. Because in a way we are forcibly inserted into it. Whatever we are, whatever we are, whoever we are, whenever we are. In the same way, the verb to be belongs to everything, but it's due to its very fundamental character that it ends up becoming the most distant and incomprehensible, demanding itself several forms of being. So, because it is so fundamental, it is also one of the most difficult things to understand. Of course, this is pure speculative. We are doing metaphysics here. I'm not telling you that everything that I'm saying is evident, but I'm making theories about the basic constitution of our reality. And the last one is the seventh. Finally, we can talk about negative terms. I can either talk I don't have money using the auxiliary and the negation adverb not, or I have no money, expression that I have some kind of inexistent entity. If this is even possible. Actually, if I wanted to speak this more correctly, I should have used the present subjunctive. If this be even possible. But sometimes we have to speak normally in these papers in order to not make people so afraid of your words, right? No, no, the word no functions as an adjective to nullify our realistic idea of money. Same thing goes to the rule that we cannot start phrases using object pronouns. I live with her cannot be said as her lives with me. This is a rule, right? The subject pronoun is the responsible for the action, and the object pronoun is the receiver of the action. But rather, she lives with me. This can be metaphysically explained by the fact that although we must start with the subject pronoun who is responsible for the creation of the fact uttered, remember that every subject can be linguistically reduced to a subject pronoun. Like Maria can be reduced to a she. We could not consider that the receiver of the fact, the object, he started the fact. So, can you see that we have a reason for why we cannot start with the receiver? Because we have to start with the cause, right? This is a metaphysical rule that we have seen above. The cause is the subject, the responsible for the action. He started the fact, or consider that the subject received it. This is simply contradictory and doesn't respect the cause-effect notion. There could be a lot of other metaphysical aspects within the English language, but I will stop here. However, this doesn't necessarily mean that we won't be facing other metaphysical aspects. Once again, this should have been an adjective without s, right? Of course, we all make mistakes. Other metaphysical aspects. This will be an adjective. An adjective, they are invariable, and this is the substantive that I can put the plural. Be facing older metaphysical aspects in the next topics. Let's go now to the epistemological inquiry. So that's it. We have seen all of the metaphysical reasons that have influenced the English grammar rules and the rules for some other languages too, as we have seen. And let's take a look about things that we can know or not, and how they affect the decisions behind the English grammar rules. See you next video then.